I'm Tim Smith with the Adams County Historical Society, and welcome to another Monuments Monday. You might know, last week we talked about General Gouverneur Kimball Warren and the signal station on Little Round Top. And I thought that this week, which is a little windier, I talk about the signal station itself. A lot of people don't recognize it or realize it, but there's a plaque to the signal station on Little Round Top, located at what sometimes is referred to as Signal Rock. And the Signal Corps tablet was unveiled on May 16th, 1911. And according to the Gettysburg newspaper, the speech given here said, "We are met here on Little Round Top on a spot made memorable for all time because of the conspicuous service of our Signal Corps at a crucial hour on the afternoon of July 2nd, 1863. The speaker, a guy named Edward Haskell, said, "At that time, Captain Hall and his flagmen, Goodnow and Chamberlain, by heroic efforts under the most galling fire, were not only able to hold the position which enabled General Warren to keep up constant communication with our commander-in-chief, but also to report the various movements of the enemy and enable our commanders to thwart Confederate movements. It was especially due to Captain Hall and his flagmen, who discovered that the enemy was moving towards General Sickles' left, that brought General Warren to Little Round Top." And there were 27 members of the U.S. Signal Corps that served during the war that attended this ceremony with their families to unveil this plaque. Now, what's interesting is that last statement, that it was the flagmen who discovered the enemy was moving towards General Sickles' left that brought General Warren to Little Round Top. And the Signal Corps in later years maintained that they had noticed the Confederate flanking movement, that they sent a message to Army headquarters. And then that message resulted in General Warren being sent to Little Round Top, where he then, was able to discover the Confederates moving into position and then helped to bring reinforcements here. As a matter of fact, in 1896, there was a history of the Signal Corps written by a J. Willard Brown. And he was friends with James Hall, the man who was in charge of this signal station at the time. And according to the account, it was Captain Hall's announcement that the enemy were moving around Sickles' left that brought General Warren to Little Round Top. When he reached the signal station, the enemy were under cover and were scarcely visible except to eyes accustomed to the use of the field glass. Captain Hall found it very difficult to convince General Warren that the enemy's infantry and artillery were there concealed. While the discussion was in progress, the enemy opened on the station. The first shell burst close to the station, and the general, a moment later, was wounded in the neck. Captain Hall then exclaimed, "Now do you see them?" And of course, you might know that General Warren was slightly wounded at some point on July 2nd, although other accounts suggest it was later in the afternoon, because he falls asleep at the meeting at General Meade's headquarters on the evening of July 2nd, the Council of War. Now, the concept that Hall had sent a message to headquarters, and that message resulted in General Meade being sent there, is not proven by the messages that we have printed in the official reports. So, I guess it's up for debate. But I did want to mention that we do have reports sent by this signal station to Army headquarters on July 2nd. One of them saw a column of the enemy's infantry move into the woods on the ridge 3 miles west of town near the Millerstown Road. Wagons, teams parked in open fields beyond that ridge moved to the rear behind the woods. See wagons moving up and down on the Chambersburg Pike at Spangler's. Another message we know was sent from this signal station at 2:10 p.m. Those troops were passing on a by road from Dr. Hall's house to her tavern on the Chambersburg Pike. A train of ambulances is following them. And a couple things that I take away right away from these messages. Number one is that they mention places that are noted on the 1858 Adams County wall map. And it's clear to me that the signal officers have a wall map with them on Little Round Top. And it's also clear that Army headquarters has a copy of the wall map. And that is probably not a surprise to anyone. But they're mentioning places on the map that they can see. And what's also interesting is I have accounts, at least 3 accounts, that mention civilians from the area being up here and helping the Signal Corps with the locations they can see in the distance. One of them is an 1890s account where there's an interview with Daniel Klingel, who lived on the Emmitsburg Road. An officer stopped him, Klingel, and took him to the top of Little Round Top. Klingel looked through their glass and told them the places the rebels were putting their wounded on the first day. And he named the roads, the distances, and where they led to. And it was not long till the first gun of the rebel battery at Warfield's blacksmith shop, an extension of Seminary Ridge opposite Little Round Top, was fired. I find that fascinating. So locals using the wall map were pointing out to residences and roads in the distance and helping with where the troops were. One last thing from here. There is a signal or a message from this signal station that talks about the counter march. And you know, when you read the official reports, you get the feeling that the signal station does not see the troops marching into position. What they see is the counter march. This came from the Round Top Mountain signal station at 1:30 p.m. A heavy column of the enemy's infantry, about 10,000 strong, is moving from opposite or extreme left towards the right. So, the signal station is kind of giving all kinds of information to Army's headquarters about the whereabouts of the Confederates, and not exactly always the correct information. One last thing about the signal station that I find fascinating. There's a book, Benson Lossing's Pictorial History of the American Civil War, I think published in 1868 in 3 volumes it ended up being. And in one of the volumes, there's a section on Gettysburg. Benson Lossing came to Gettysburg a few weeks after the battle. David McConaughey gave him a tour of the battlefield. He came back in September 1866 and made illustrations of things on the battlefield that he thought were interesting. And one of the things he was shown during his tour was the signal station on Little Round Top. And he drew these rocks from this angle. And I remember when I first saw it, I said, wow, I wonder if I can figure out where those rocks are. And I think people thought it was just a silly drawing and it really didn't jive with the terrain on top of the hill. But sure enough, that drawing was done from this angle, and this area was referred to as the signal station. Now, in point of fact, this area is not far at all from the top of the hill where General Warren's statue is and where the Signal Corps marker rock is. Remember, if you like the content that we put on our YouTube channel, please like and subscribe.